Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving headfirst into a total paradigm shift when it comes to how we understand wealth. Look, if building real, lasting wealth feels completely impossible right now, well, the source material we're digging into today suggests it's likely because we've totally misunderstood the actual purpose of money. We're going to break down how these texts literally redefine the dollar bill, shifting our focus away from just scraping by for simple comfort and moving us into the realm of true, lasting, generational wealth. Let's get into it.
So, let me ask you a question. What do you actually think the primary purpose of money is? Seriously, think about it for a second. For most of us, we've been conditioned to view it as a simple, direct trade, right? You trade your precious time for some cash, and then you immediately turn around and trade that cash just to survive, to pay for your car, buy groceries, keep the lights on. But the material we're analyzing today makes a really bold argument. Paying bills and just accumulating cash to keep your head above water, that is absolutely not the primary purpose of money, not even close. Okay, let's dive into this. The texts describe a pretty harsh reality for the vast majority of people, and it's called the outgo trap. Basically, money comes in through your job, and boom, it goes straight out the window in the form of bills. People who get stuck in this cycle end up hyper-obsessing over their income, but solely for the purpose of paying those bills. And according to the research, it's that exact belief, the idea that paying bills is what money is actually for, that keeps you completely chained to this relentless, exhausting cycle.
Which brings us right to the time trap. In this specific cycle, your work and your time are your absolute only assets. Think about how dangerous that is. If you stop working, the money stops entirely. The well just runs dry. Sure, earning a slightly higher hourly wage might make life incrementally better, but it's never going to make it exponentially better. The core takeaway from the material here is that trading time linearly for dollars is a massive trap. Because if your only strategy is running faster and faster against the clock, well, eventually you're going to run out of time.
Now, the sources outline a crystal clear distinction between how the middle class operates and how the wealthy operate. Typically, the middle class earns enough income to pay their bills on time, right? So what do? They use debt to go out and acquire wealth-reducing liabilities. The money comes in, pays for those liabilities, and goes right back out the door. The wealthy, on the other hand, have a completely different focus. They take their time and their money and laser focus on acquiring income-producing assets. They direct their capital toward a system designed to generate more wealth rather than just buying things that keep them afloat.
The research actually highlights a fascinating fork in the road when it comes to the psychology of spending. For most folks, the very first thought they have when they get a chunk of money is, what can I buy? Designer bags, luxury cars, the newest gadgets, those are all wealth-reducing liabilities. But the wealthy? Their brains are wired differently. They immediately look to acquire or upgrade assets that are going to produce even more money. We're talking real estate, stocks, businesses. The texts make it very clear. If turning your money into assets isn't your literal first financial reflex, you and your family will always be forced to physically work for every single dollar you earn. But here's the reality check. Acquiring these assets requires a massive mindset shift, and it all revolves around delayed gratification. When you first pour your time and money into an income-producing asset, the stark economic reality is that, well, it might produce absolutely nothing in the beginning. It takes time. To build true wealth, the sources argue, you have to value the long term over the short term. It's all about sacrificing that immediate fleeting comfort right now to secure rock-solid financial stability for the future. I absolutely love this next part. The sources use this incredibly profound metaphor to explain how wealth actually functions in the real world. They compare working in a factory to planting a garden. The argument is that the universe doesn't operate like an assembly line, where everyone is fighting over slices of a fixed economic pie. It operates way more like a garden. God didn't put man in a factory to work, he put him in a garden. A lot of our financial struggles come from operating with this rigid factory mindset, when really we should be focused on planting seeds.
So, let's play out this garden metaphor. You plant a seed, right? That seed represents your asset. You water it, it grows, and eventually it produces fruit. That fruit represents your cash flow. The absolute golden rule presented here is this: you live off the fruit. You never, ever eat the seed. As you build up this asset machine, you're essentially planting a massive orchard of seeds that will eventually generate more than enough resources to sustain you, without you having to be out there doing constant backbreaking labor. And when you relentlessly acquire these assets, the material notes that you eventually hit this magical tipping point. The income generated from your assets becomes large enough to pay for literally all your bills and liabilities. Imagine writing a book just one time, and the royalties cover your monthly expenses for the rest of your life. That's the power of this. Emphasizing this core concept, the texts show that the exact moment your assets cover your outgo, boom, you break the chains of the rat race forever.
But wait, even when people manage to break out of that paycheck-to-paycheck cycle, a lot of them fall right into another trap. It's what the texts call the illusion of wealth, cash accumulation. From day one, we are taught to just save, save, save. We all kind of picture this giant vault of coins we can swim in like Scrooge McDuck. However, the sources emphasize that simply hoarding money in a pile is a totally flawed strategy. Why? Because of inflation. Over time, that static pile of cash is literally losing its value every single day.
And this brilliantly illustrates the next concept from the texts. They compare cash accumulation to the Dead Sea and cash flow to a continuous, winding, lazy river. Think about the Dead Sea. It has water flowing in, but absolutely no outlets. It's a stagnant pool where nothing can actually live. Contrast that with a flowing river, which is totally teeming with life. The material argues that if your money only has inlets, it just turns into a Dead Sea. For money to act as a proper, powerful financial tool, it has to flow.
The underlying philosophy here is absolutely crucial. Massive cash flow is vastly superior to massive cash accumulation, period. The sources highlight this tragic reality where so many people actually have huge amounts of savings trapped in retirement accounts, but they still struggle on a daily basis. Why? Because they have no cash flow. A flowing, continuous river of income is presented as the absolute lifeblood of financial freedom. It supports you today and well into the future.
Now, if we zoom out and look at this historically, from ancient bartering and trade through the massive industrial expansion, all the way to today's digital finance, the mechanics of money have definitely changed. But the ultimate goal, that's remained exactly the same, securing an infinite future. True wealth, according to the sources, isn't just about surviving the present moment or hoarding a giant retirement nest egg. It is entirely about designing a financial system that can outlast you, echoing forward into future generations.
Which naturally leads us right into the legacy phase. The material points out a huge misconception. Generational wealth is usually thought of as leaving behind a specific massive dollar amount, but in reality, it's a system of cash perpetuation. When you adopt this mindset early on, you aren't just piling up coins to hand over one day. You are meticulously building a self-sustaining ecosystem where that cash flow keeps right on perpetuating, long after you are gone.
So how do you actually build this system of cash perpetuation? Well, the sources outline 3 very specific critical mechanics. Step 1, you have to acquire assets that generate independent income. We've talked a lot about that. Step 2, you need to secure comprehensive life insurance. And step 3, you absolutely must educate your children. Let's take a closer look at those last 2 points because they are game changers.
I know life insurance isn't the most exciting topic, but the texts describe it as a strategic, almost impenetrable defensive wall that wealthy families have used for generations. It is not just about income replacement. It's positioned as a critical tool to prevent the total disruption of your family's wealth building during a tragedy. The material explains that having comprehensive life insurance on your whole family gives your loved ones the ability to step back during incredibly hard times. It ensures that the wealth machine you built doesn't just collapse because they're forced to go back to work while they're grieving.
And then there's a final step outlined in the material: education. Look, just handing over a bunch of assets to the next generation without teaching them financial literacy, that is a guaranteed recipe for wealth decimation. The texts argue forcefully that you have to teach your kids the difference between assets and liabilities. You have to teach them to value cash flow over just accumulating cash. Because if they don't understand the system you built, they're basically just going to eat the seeds, wiping out all that wealth instead of perpetuating it.
So the crucial point is making the shift to what the material calls the infinite capital mind. This is where you completely shift your perspective away from the month-to-month panic of paying utility bills, and you zoom out. You focus on perpetual growth and building generational ecosystems. The sources emphasize that at the end of the day, money is literally just the tool. True wealth is the ecosystem you build around your life, one that generates continuous flow, protects your family from inevitable disruptions, and totally empowers your descendants. The source material leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative definition. Wealth is your ability to create value for someone other than yourself. Think about that. When you consistently create value for others, the cash flow inevitably follows right behind it. The text really challenges here. What value are you going to create today that will plant the seed for your own lazy river of true, perpetuating generational wealth? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and we'll catch you in the next one.